Ever wonder why economics seems so complicated? It's not just about money or markets. At its core, economics is a study of how people interact with valuable resources, make choices, and navigate scarcity. It's a fascinating field, brimming with complexity, largely due to its intersection with human behavior, politics, and quality of life. It's a lens through which we view and understand societal patterns and changes. So economics is more than just a bunch of numbers and charts. It's about human lives and the world we live in. Did you know that economists agree on most subjects, but often it's our ideologies that shape our perspectives? Now let's chew on that for a moment. While it's true that there's a broad consensus among economists on many issues, our personal ideologies can color our interpretation of economic principles. For instance, those who champion egalitarianism may lean towards policies that promote income equality, whereas proponents of meritocracy might favor an economic framework that rewards effort and skill. This diversity of ideologies doesn't invalidate economic consensus. Instead, it adds a layer of richness and complexity to the discourse. It's like viewing a sculpture from different angles. Each perspective offers a unique insight, but none can fully capture the entire piece. It's this interplay between consensus and individual interpretation that makes economics such a fascinating field. Remember, our economic views often say more about our ideologies than they do about the facts. Now let's talk about some common misconceptions in economics, focusing on economies of scale and induced demand. You see, economics is a complex field and it's easy to misunderstand or oversimplify its intricate concepts. Economies of scale and induced demand are two such instances that are often misinterpreted. They're frequently used in discussions, but the underlying principles are often lost or distorted. It's time to debunk these myths and understand the real story behind them. Have you heard of economies of scale? It's not about size, but about efficiency. Let's imagine a belt buckle manufacturing company. When they produce a single buckle, the cost is high because it includes all the fixed costs, like machinery, rent, and salaries. This is the initial investment, the cost of setting up shop. But here's where economies of scale come into play. When the company starts to produce more buckles, the total cost increases, yes, but the cost per buckle decreases. Why? Because the fixed costs are spread across a larger number of units. The machinery is already there, the rent is already paid, and the employees are already hired. So the more belt buckles produced, the lower the cost per unit. In other words, as production increases, unit costs decrease. This is the essence of economies of scale. So economies of scale are all about achieving efficiency and reducing costs. Economies of scale might sound great, but they also have their challenges. On one hand, in the short term, the concept is quite straightforward. As production increases, average costs per unit decrease. This can lead to significant cost savings, especially when it comes to large-scale manufacturing. Investments in infrastructure, such as new machinery or software, can further reduce unit costs, making a business more competitive and profitable. However, the long-term effects may not be as rosy. For instance, labor costs can increase over time, either due to wage inflation or because larger-scale operations often require more specialized skills. Additionally, the initial investment in infrastructure can be substantial, and it may take years to recoup these costs. And let's not forget about the potential environmental impact of increased production. So while economies of scale can be beneficial, they also come with their own set of challenges. Remember, in economics, what works in the short term may not always work in the long term. Let's move on to another misunderstood theory. Induced demand. Picture this. A city expands its highway to ease traffic congestion. The newly widened lanes beckon to drivers, promising a faster commute. But what happens next might surprise you. Instead of the traffic thinning out, it often stays the same or even increases. This, my friends, is induced demand in action. The theory posits that increasing the supply of a service, like highway lanes, can actually lead to an increase in demand for that service. The new, wider highway encourages more people to drive, leading to more cars on the road, and voila, we're back to square one with traffic congestion. It's like trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on it. Induced demand is a counterintuitive concept, but understanding it can help us make smarter decisions about public infrastructure. So increasing the supply doesn't always solve the problem. Sometimes it can even make it worse. So what have we learned today? We've dived into the complexity of economics, a field that not only studies interactions with valuable resources, but also intersects with politics and quality of life. We've recognized the diversity of ideologies influencing economic perspectives despite a consensus on many subjects. We've debunked some common misunderstandings in economics, focusing on economies of scale and induced demand. We've discovered that economies of scale are not always beneficial in the long run, as illustrated by China's high-speed rail expansion. We've also critically evaluated the induced demand theory, realizing that increasing supply does not always lead to increased demand, especially in transportation infrastructure planning. We've suggested alternative solutions such as congestion charges and investment in public transportation, underlining the importance of evidence-based policymaking over flawed economic theories. Remember, economics isn't just about theories, it's about making informed decisions that can impact our lives and our world.